Okay, all right. So yeah, thank you so much for joining. I will be recording this and it will be available on our website and YouTube channel, and I'll also send the link to it as well, so you can always refer back to it. But it's really just an EU visa national update that we think that is quite relevant at this time. And so really it's not to kind of cause any confusion or to worry anybody, but it is just to give an overview. So yes, thank you so much for joining. Shahina, I'm going to pass over to you in a minute, but before I do, I'm going to introduce Steve, and Steve is now the Director of International at MPW Schools and Colleges with us, and Steve is going to give just a brief overview as to where we are in terms of the vaccination process, and obviously now the good news is that the schools have opened from yesterday. So over to you, Steve, just to give a brief intro there.
Thank you very much. Yes, I will be quick so as not to steal any highlights from Shahina and the visa updates. But number one, I'm really pleased to be back in the school today. So I'm sat in the office, which is connected to the school at MPW London, and the schools opened yesterday and this week, which I think is really positive. So I'm very pleased about that. And I think the UK is moving in the right direction. You probably follow the similar news as we all do in the UK. So, you know, the vaccination here is just rolling out so quickly, actually. More than 24 million people already have been vaccinated, and 500,000 people per day. And that has what has enabled us to open the schools at this point, all of the schools, primary and secondary schools. And we're testing our students in the schools this week, yesterday and today and tomorrow, and that's going really well at the moment. And we'll be doing that over the next 2 weeks, actually, in the 3 MPW colleges, just to allow the students back into the classroom, and you know, which we all agree is a much better learning experience for them all. So those are 2 big positives from the UK at the moment: the vaccination rollout and the schools reopening. We also have a roadmap now from the government where every 4 weeks we have a date when something reopens, whether or not it's the hospitality industry or retail. By June, by the 21st of June, actually, is the date when all restrictions will be lifted. So 21st of June is the longest day of the year, but it's also the day where all restrictions will be lifted. So we have a lot of things to look forward to in the next few months. Exams, if you have students in the UK already, you've probably heard that exams have been cancelled. So all the exams this summer for secondary schools, GCSEs and A-levels, are what we call tutor assessed grades. So we will be doing those internally, and they're not externally moderated by the exam bodies. That actually really suits MPW because our tutors know the students very well, because they all have their own personal tutor and director of studies. So they will be having a lot of one-to-one time with their tutors over the next few weeks and few months, actually leading to the exams. And then, of course, the big positive really is September 21, which is what we're all working for now, which is our next recruitment date, where things will be back to normal completely within the schools. So September 21 will be, we hope, as September 2019 and before, so pre-pandemic, the new normal, we're all calling it now. But MPW colleges and K-12 secondary education open as normal in the UK. So that's what we're working towards now. So, you know, a few months ago, we didn't really have much positive news to tell people, but we do now, and we're definitely moving in the right direction, which I hope, you know, you as our partners selling the UK experience and the UK study, I hope that also gives you something to work with as well. So that is it from me. It's very nice to see you all. I know some of you already, and I will be quiet now, and I'll put myself on mute. I'll disappear, but I'll still be here at the end if there are any questions, and I will hand over to Shahina.
Hi everybody. Hello Felicity, did you want to say anything, or can I start off?
Oh, you're more than welcome. Off you go.
Okay, thank you. I'm just gonna be sharing my screen. Just 1 second. Okay, there we go. Can you all see that good ballistic?
No, we can't see your screen at the moment.
That's really odd. I think that should be better now.
Yep, perfect. We can.
All right then. Well, welcome everybody. I'm head of admissions and visa compliance, but today I'm going to speak majority of the time on visas and what the rules are. But I will try to make it so that you also are clear what sort of documents your students will require when applying to MPW, which at a later point then they will apply for a visa if they do need to apply for a visa. Now, there has been a lot of changes, as we all know, with Brexit. And from the 1st of January of 2021, with the fact that free movement ended, so all EU nationals require a visa to study in the UK. Now, requiring a visa could be for a few different ways. A student can apply for a student visa if they need to, meaning unless they are entitled to an EU settlement status, which they can apply for, then they would not need to apply for a student visa. I will speak a bit more and explain who is entitled or who can apply for an EU settlement scheme. One of the other things with the changes that happened with Brexit as well, the UK government, the UK VI introduced some new visa rules. They changed. For some of you who have dealt with visas maybe before, you would probably know that the student visas, they used to be called Tier 4, but now all student visas are called student visa or student route, and there are a few differentiations between them. The other changes that took place is the visitor visa. So before there used to be a short-term visitor visa, which students could apply for to come on a short-term visa, but that's changed slightly, and I'll also explain in further details about that.
So it
and the last one, which is coming into place, into effect on the 1st of July, so they will launch it on the 1st of July, is the graduate route. So that graduate route is a visa that would be useful at a later stage for your students. Or what will happen is a student who has studied in the UK for a certain period of time, once they graduate from their bachelor degree or undergraduate or even a postgraduate qualification, they will then be entitled to apply for a graduate visa, which will allow them to stay in the UK for some time, to look for a job, for example, and to work. I'll also go through the details of that a little bit later on through the slides. With regards to the Tier 4 visa, which used to be the Tier 4 visa, that changed in October 2020, and the two Tier 4 visa, which was a child and adult, for those who used to know about visas or deal with visas, it's now been replaced with the student and the child student route. Now, going back to the EU settlement scheme, what you need to understand is if you had any students who have been studying in the UK or have come to the UK before the 31st of December 2020, it's very likely that they may be eligible to apply for an EU settlement. And to apply for the settlement, they've got to do this through a website. It's mainly can be done on a smartphone, and the rules are if they have, even if let's say you have a student who arrived in the UK, for example, on the 1st of December 2020, and they had an address, they were not necessarily registered, but they have a permanent address, or potentially were about to leave in the UK, they will be entitled to apply for the EU settlement. So that's something to bear in mind very much, and wherever possible, always check if a student has traveled to the UK recently and what the situation is. Now, I will also add to that, with COVID, what has happened is there's been students who have actually traveled to the UK, let's say in September last year, so it's September 2020, and they attended lessons at a school until, let's say, end of October, and because of the lockdown, they decided to fly back to France, for example, and go back home, but continuing their studies online. So for a student in that position, even though on the 31st of December or the 1st of January 2021, they were in their country in France, they will still be allowed to apply for the EU settlement because they originally arrived in the UK in September 2020. So that's the case. If you have a situation like that and you're unclear of the situation, you can always contact me or Felicity, and we will be able to help you. So students, like I said, can apply if they themselves or their family are from an EU country, from Switzerland, Norway, Iceland, and Liechtenstein. And also, if they started living, the important thing to know is if they started living in the UK before the 1st of January, as I said, they will be able to very much probably apply for a EU settlement. There is a deadline to apply for that status, and that the deadline is the 30th of June 2020. Now, what the EU settlement allows them is it can give them two status. It's either a settled status, which is an indefinite leave to remain and stay in the UK, or the other sort of status they can have, it's a pre-settled status, and that will allow them to have access and live in the UK, so they get a sort of, not a visa, but it's a sort of status where they're allowed to live in the UK for the next 5 years, and after that they will be able to change their status from pre-settled to settled status. So that's how the EU settlement scheme works. Now, for EU nationals who arrived in the UK or will arrive in the UK in this year in 2021, so after the 1st of January, they can enter as a visitor if they are attending a course that's less than 6 months. If they're attending a course that's more than 6 months, automatically they will have to apply for a child, student, or student visa. If the course is longer than 6 months, they will not have any other way, unless, like I said, they are entitled to an EU settlement scheme. Like I said, the EU settlement scheme can be done via smartphone, so it's nothing there's no form like physical form to fill in. It can be all done on the smartphone, and there are lots of different steps to go through. They have to answer a number of questions, and there's when it reaches a screen where they have to upload a letter to prove their address. So it's fairly straightforward, and I can separately send you a document which I have on how, which goes step by step on how to apply for that scheme if you have any students in this position. with this, the students do not get a visa like they would if they apply for a student visa. They will not get a BRP card, so like a biometric resident permit. They don't get any of this. The only thing that they get is an online status. So they will receive a letter from the Home Office, which will explain that they've been their status has been successful and they've been granted. This status can be viewed on the link that I have here, and those slides will be shared, so don't worry. And they can then share the status, so that letter that they receive, they can share that with the school once they receive it. It works very similarly if someone is working in the UK. There are some changes, but the way they access the documents is the same. And like I said, if a student do not qualify for the EU settlement scheme, they have to apply for one of the other visa routes. Irish citizens do not apply for the EU settlement or visa. They are considered as British, so they don't need a visa to study in the UK, in case you have any of those students. Now, the important thing is to try to understand the visa route between a child student visa and a student visa. So for the child student, any students who are aged between 4 to 17 years old, they can apply through the child visa. They must have an unconditional offer on a course at an independent school, so they have to have a letter to show. They must prove that they have sufficient money to cover the course fees and their living costs as well. They also need to show a letter, so it's a parental consent letter, so they have to show a letter from their parents or legal guardian to explain that they have been given authorization to go and study in the UK and potentially maybe living there as well, obviously, and travel to the UK. Now, we have templates at MPW, which I usually share with agents once a student is registered, so that they can use this as a guidance or as an example to produce that letter. So you don't have to go and draft that letter. So don't worry about that. Now, under the student route, a student can study up to 6 years. So they can study up to 6 years in the UK for any students who are under 16 years old. And if the student is aged between 16 to 17, then they can study up to 3 years. So that's how we can assess whether they apply for a child student route. Then we move on to the student route itself, which generally applies to students who are age 16 or over. Now, it can be confusing because you'd say, oh, but the student route applies to someone who's 16, but the child student also applies to someone who's 16. That's very true. You can have both. So let's say you have a student who's 16 and a half. You can decide to apply a child student visa for them, or you can decide to apply a student route visa for them. Now, does it make a difference? Not massively, but at MPW, what we will tend to do is, because we're an independent school as well, we will then get the student to apply for a child student if they are 16 and a half. Because we are an independent school. If you're dealing with a school that is not an independent school, and let's say they have a different sort of license, for example, they then will not be able to use the child student option. That's when they will use the student route option. I know it's a little bit confusing. If you have questions, bear with me. I'll answer them at the end. But with the student route, the other thing is if a student is 17, they can apply under either as well, but it then will depend. If it's MPW, we will get them to apply under this child student route, as it's much more straightforward in terms of the application. The student route is for anyone aged 16 or over. the majority of students who are nearly 17 or 18, they will then apply for student route. They need an unconditional offer as well by a licensed student sponsor. So the difference between a licensed student sponsor and an independent school is a licensed student sponsor may not have younger students, so they only have older students. But the other thing is an independent school. Some independent school will only have students till the age of 16 and not older than that. So then they will not be categorized as a licensed student sponsor, which is the student one is the adult, so anyone above 17 or 18. Proof of funds. To cover, they also obviously need to prove that they have the money for the course fees and the living costs. I will explain a little bit more in detail about the course fees and living costs in a moment. They have to prove their English language testing. So anyone who's 18 or over must ensure they have an English language qualification, which is a CELT. The CELT stands for Secure English Language Testing. A student who's applying for student route would generally be someone who's doing A-levels or foundation. So the level of the qualification will have to be NQF level 3 or above. If it cannot be for someone who's a GCSE student, because a GCSE qualification is a level 2 qualification. So there are some flexibilities here, but as long as it's not a GCSE student studying for GCSEs, then we are fine with the student route. We also must show academic progress when a student is on a student route. So let's say if you have a student doing an A-level, for example, course, once they finish their A-level after, let's say they do 1 year A-level course, they're on a student route, they have to show that they're moving on to going to university and show the progression. If you have a student, another example, if you have a student who was on a child student route doing GCSEs and they are now going to do A-levels, they must show and they now will apply for student route. Obviously, you can see the academic progression. The complicated example is if you have one student who's done an A-level for 1 year and they are registered to be doing a 2-year A-level course. During the first year of studies, they start not doing very well and they feel like they're not, the A-level program was a mistake and it's not for them. And instead they want to transfer to a 1-year foundation course. So because they are doing, they were doing a level 3 qualification, which is the A-level, and they're transferring rather to a foundation course, which is also a level 3 qualification. In cases like that, it is very important to be able to show that there is some sort of progression or explain to UKVI when the new visa is being applied why there is a change in the same level, why the students have moved from the same level to another course which is of the same level. You may have questions which I'm happy to answer at the end with regards to that. The other important thing to note about the student route is for any student, when a student turns 18 and if they're on a student route visa, as soon as they turn 18, there is a time limit, like a clock that starts. So they will only have 2 years to complete any qualifications which is below degree level. So it's not 2 years including the years they go to university to study for a bachelor, for example. For degree, no, it's the 2 years between the A-levels or any other foundation that they do. So there is a time limit there. So it's always important to check that and work it out as well. It's it's not complicated, but you have to get your head around it to be able to do the calculations. Students who apply for the student route as well will often be asked to have, in some cases, be asked to have an interview at times. It's not automatic that they need an interview, but once a caseworker is looking at an application, if they feel they need to have an interview with the students, they will. This is generally for a lot for international students. I do know that they are trying to make it more easier in some ways for European students. Therefore, it's going to be very, very unlikely that interviews will be requested for EU national students, but there may be a situation where sometimes a caseworker might do. So do not be surprised if ever you do get one of your students do get asked to come for an interview. They will give them advice, and if you need assistance in terms of preparing the students, we would be happy to assist there as well. Now, with the child student route, they can apply for their visa 6 months before the course start date. So at the moment with MPW, our courses will start on the 13th of September 2021. So if one of your students has registered, as long as we have we've gone through, checked all the documents, we've got all the documents in place, an application can start as early as the middle of March, so the 14th, 15th of March. And once the application is submitted online, it would take about 3 weeks approximately for UKVI to give you an answer and like a decision on the application. And the visa will be issued so that it is a date that is near to the course start date. So it would be the student can travel up to 1 month before the start date. So in such situation, the course will start middle of September. The students will be allowed to travel from the middle of August. Now, the child student route allows the students to extend their visa or switch their visa, so switching from one type of visa to another visa inside the UK when they're applying for an extension. So they not need to go back to their home country to do that. Before, the rules used to be that they had to return to their home country to do it, but now they can do it from within the UK if they wish to do that. Of course, they must still meet all the requirements of the visa route that they're applying for. They must pay the application fee and they must submit the application online. So I've given you an example here. If, let's say, this September 2020, you have a student who's doing an A-level on a child student visa. When they finish their course with MPW, and they will hopefully be moving on to a university degree, and at that point they will switch from child student to student visa, and they can apply for this visa within the UK, so they don't have to go back home if they don't want to be able to apply for that. And with the visa fees and health immigration surcharge, this is the amount that the £348 is for any students applying from outside the UK. For 475, it's for any students who are extending their visa or switching to another visa from inside the UK. So if they're doing the application inside the UK. And this application fee is for like a one-off application cost. The health surcharge, the charge varies slightly, and there's a calculator that you can play around with on the Gov website to be able to work out, because it will depend on the length of the course to be able to assess how much the student needs to pay. For the health surcharge, students must pay for the surcharge for the whole duration of the fees. They can't just pay 1 year and say I will pay another year later on. If they are registered on a course that's 2 years long in terms of duration, they must pay the health surcharge for 2 months at the application stage. Of course, if it happens that the students decide for whatever reason after 1 year they're not continuing with the course, so they are withdrawing from the course and they're going back to their home country or changing their visa type, they are able to ask for a refund from the government website, from the UKVI. There is a link to do that. It's useful for you guys to know as well. And to apply for the visa, it's all done online, and that's the link to go to. Now, I'm going to go through the admissions process at MPW plus the documents that are required for the UKVI. So every student applying for a child student road visa, they will require a valid passport, so it can't be an expired passport. They have to have an unconditional offer from a course provider. They must also, so that could be like in the format of an offer letter, for example, and it has to have all the details about the course fees, the course title, the length of the course, the name of the students, the sort of offer letter that MPW will send to you. We also, the student must also have evidence of their qualification, so that they've given to the course provider. So the school transcript, the school reports that we would normally ask you to provide to us when we are assessing the admissions for a student. Those qualifications must be original documents. A copy of an original document will be acceptable. In cases where you have to get translation done, the translation must be authorized, so it must be translated by someone who is who's recognized by the UKVI, because there are some translators, someone like a teacher could do it, but they're not recognized by UKVI. Those translation will not be accepted. They also need to have a written consent letter. So that's the parental consent letter, which states that their parents must sign that. Both parents normally must sign that and date it. That consent letter must be a month old at the time of application. So if you have a student who will apply for their visa, let's say at the beginning of July, there is no point getting that consent letter ready now. You have to make sure that you have it ready at the beginning of June or sometime in June, so that it's a month old. Preferably, I would say, nearer to the time when you are submitting the application. We would also ask you, so I would ask you to send me a copy of that letter as well, so that we have that on file. The letter must ensure that it includes they're consenting to the visa application, they're consenting to the living arrangements of the student when they're in the UK, and their care as well. So it must have the address where the students will be, and it must have the guardian details of the student as well, and they must consent that the student will be traveling to the UK. Like I said, we have a draft template that we provide to everybody, so that it makes their life much simpler to get that letter ready when the time comes for the visa application. And lastly, the student will also need a CAS, which is a confirmation of acceptance of studies. This is issued by the sponsor, so by ourselves. Now, MPW will not issue the final CAS until all the documents have been received and checked. So if I were to explain a little bit the admissions process, what normally happens is you have a student who applies, they submit their documents, Felicity will process the application, she will arrange an interview, a discussion with the student. Once that happens, if a test, any sort of test is required, such as a maths test maybe, depending on the subjects they're doing, and an English language test if needed at that point to assess their level of English from an academic aspect. All that's done, then an offer letter is made and sent out to yourself or the family. Once the offer letter is then made, what will happen is offer is received from the family, and they decide to accept the offer. They will then need to complete their registration form, which is an online registration form. You receive the link for that. And then they organize the payment, and we also need to then at the same time, Felicity will send out the completed registration form for it to be signed. We need to receive a signed registration form, and once all that is done, payments received, at that point we will then confirm that we've got everything and the student is registered at the school, and we can start the visa process soon, depending on the timing as well. And I will then I deal with the visa compliance aspect. So then I will start checking all the documents, making sure they're correct. If there's anything that is inaccurate, I will write back to you and explain and ask for the right one. And at that point, I will issue a draft CAS. So the difference between a draft CAS and a final CAS is the draft CAS will have all the information that would normally be on a final CAS. The only thing it won't have, there's a long digit number that is issued once the final CAS is issued. It won't have that number, because what the idea is to send the draft CAS to yourself and to the family for you all to check that the information on the CAS is correct. Because once a CAS has been finalized and issued, there are only a few things that we can amend on the CAS. We cannot amend a lot of things, which then means that we can't, if it's issued and it's wrong, we can't use that CAS. We have to issue a new one. We are very careful with that because each educational provider in the UK, they do not have unlimited amount of CAS. They have a limited amount of CAS that UKVI gave to them every year. Hence the reason we have to be careful that we don't issue too many CASs for one student, and we check that it's very thorough and accurate before it's sent out. Now, there may be some additional documents that would be required for some students in some circumstances. When I say such as financial evidence, what I mean is the financial evidence is required for everyone. However, for EU students, they are under the low risk nationality list, which means that when they are submitting a visa application, they do not need to submit the financial evidence. So they don't need to submit the bank statement showing that they have so much money in their bank for the course fees and for their maintenance or their living expenses. Even though they don't need to show it, it's very, very advisable to always have the money and the bank statement ready, because once you submit an application, what could happen is the caseworker may decide that they want to see the financial evidence. If they do decide that they want to see it, they will write to the student and ask for this to be submitted immediately. Or they give them a delay of a few days, but not a long period, which means that obviously if the student or the family do not have the right amount of money in the account, then it will become an issue, which means that the application could be rejected. So that's why it's important to prepare the document in advance in case you're asked to submit it. Now, I do write birth certificate here. The reason I do write birth certificate is because if a financial evidence such as a bank statement is requested and the bank statement is in the father's or the mother's name, automatically what happens is they have to submit the bank statement, which is under the father's name, plus they have to submit a birth certificate to show that that student is the father, to prove the relationship between the student and the father. That's why they have to submit a birth certificate. There's a lot of more information on the link I've provided there as well. I mean, hopefully you wouldn't have many students in the situation where they're asking for the financial evidence, but it's important for you to know. Student route, there are some changes to the child route, but in effect it's the same in terms of they can apply for 6 months before the course start date. They will obtain a decision in 3 weeks, and they can travel up to a month before the course start date if the course is longer than 6 months duration. If they're doing a shorter course, then they can travel like a week before. So if it's shorter than 6 months. The same thing, they can apply, they can extend and switch their visa in the UK once they've had a student route visa. And they must go through the same requirements in terms of applying, submitting documentation, paying the application fee and submitting it online. So an example here is a student, if you have an A-level student who applied, who has come to the UK on a student visa, they can extend that student visa to another student visa if they're progressing from A-level to a degree level. So if I am more explicit, let's say you have a student who starts with MPW in September 2021, the student is 18. In September, what will happen is that student will apply for a student visa to come in September. They will do 1 year of their A-level, complete their A-level in June 2022, and hopefully be able to move and progress to university degree level in September 2022. In this case, the student will extend their visa from a student visa to another student visa with a different provider, education provider. And in this situation, that's where they will be able to apply in the UK as long as they provide everything. Another example is if you have a student who starts in the UK in September 2021, and they will go to a university to study a master's, for example. They study the master's for 1 year until June 2022, let's say. And after that, what will happen is they will most likely be entitled to still apply for the graduate visa route. The graduate visa is a new visa route that allows students that has graduated on a course in the UK on an undergraduate or postgraduate course, they entitle them to apply. It's a bit like you could call it a working visa. What it allows them to do is to stay in the UK, start doing a job, any job they can. Maybe if they want, they can get a job in Starbucks or in a shop. They start working. At the same time, what they can do is start actively applying for a job in the UK, which in the field that they studied. Let's say they studied computer science and they want to try to apply for a job in that field. That's what will happen. That's what the graduate route is about, and it's going to be very useful, I think, for a lot of students from this July onwards. The visa application fee is the same, 348 and 475 from the first one is from outside the UK and from inside the UK, and the health Surcharge works the same way as I explained for the child student route. And to apply, this is the link where you can go to apply for the visa as well. The documents, there's just a few differences. They still need a valid passport. They still need an unconditional offer from a licensed student sponsor. They will need the evidence of qualification that they've used to apply. The English language requirement, this is additional. So a child do not need to prove their English language, whereas a student route visa, they need to prove their English language, which must be a CELT. I'll explain more about English language in a moment. They need the CAS, similarly to how I explained for the previous one, and the same way they do not, at the time of applying, they do not need to provide their financial evidence such as bank statement. But it's important to prepare them similarly to before, because they might be asked, if they are asked rather, then they have to produce the documents. English language requirement. I know this has been a long debate, and it's a bit unfortunate, but it is a UKVI requirement, and everybody needs it if they're 18 and they haven't got any other except English language qualification that is accepted by UKVI. So every student who is applying for a student route visa and they're 18 or over, they must prove their English language when they apply for their visa. And that must be done through, they call it a CELT, which is a secure English language test. And it must be from one of the approved UKVI provider. The approved test providers and the approved tests are IELTS CELT for UKVI, the language certificate, the PT academic for UKVI, that's the Pearson test, and the PSI Services UK Limited, which has recently been added from January. The first three are the most popular one, or rather, the majority of students will tend to do IELTS or Pearson, but it is depending on what is available and can be done then, depending on the area. There has been issues in some countries with regards to the test centers being closed or not being open in different areas. Now, UKVI has made an announcement that recently that they are doing their best to get centers reopened, but it is taking time. If we compare the centers that are open currently compared to last year, in, let's say, April, May time, there are more centers open this year. And last year, if I take the example of last year, what happened is a lot of centers started reopening in June and July, which was a little bit late, but it's still we still managed to get the students to do their tests and to arrive in the UK in September, October time. For this year, I know some of you are very concerned about the situation, but what we can say is they are doing their best to try to get things reopen, and if some can be clever in the terms of how they are booking their tests in a different city, and if they can travel, then that would be the best thing. What I would say is, if you can find a test somewhere that has a slot, do book it as soon as possible. The reason is I could advise you to say wait a little bit, because things will reopen in end of April or May. But once things are reopened and everything is easy to access, there could potentially be a situation where you will find it difficult to book a test because of the backlog and lots of people waiting for the test to be open. So the sooner you can try to book a test, in my opinion, if you can find one, do it. It doesn't, of course, I understand that many students sometimes want to do the IELTS compared to the Pearson or the language certificate. But it doesn't have to be an IELTS. You can do one of the other two if it's available as well. There's a lot of more guidance in terms of how to apply or how to prove the test on the guidance that I've provided here for the CELT. And the level of English for a student who's studying A-level or a foundation will be as the SCFR level B1. So, but that is applicable for students who are studying below degree level. For someone who's studying above a degree level or above, I believe it's B2, but if you click on the link below, you'll have all the information you need. Now, with the English language, as much as I've said you need a CELT certificate, so that one of the English tests qualification, there are some students that can have some exemptions. Now, with the exemptions, what will happen is if a student has, for example, met the English language requirement in a previous visa application, so let's say they've applied for a visa before and they did prove that they had their English language qualification, the level required, then they will not need to meet the requirement again, so long that the level of English required for the new application meets the requirement for that. So as long as they were the same with the requirement from before and the new application for now. Also, if you've had a student who has got, let's say they were in the UK before, they have a GCSE, an A-level or a Scottish equivalent qualification for an English language or English literature, having studied in a school in the UK whilst they were under the age of 18, that qualification will be accepted as an exception. And my best advice is there are lots of different qualifications. There are some students who do, let's say, they can do a GCSE in a country overseas, but they're at an international school, which is, like, say, a branch of a UK school, which has a branch abroad. In a situation like that, because the student hasn't studied in the UK, they've studied, let's say, in Germany instead of the UK, but the school was a British school, most likely that qualification in Germany will not be accepted. However, having said that, it's always useful to send the qualification to us for us to double check for you whether that qualification will be accepted or not. And students from the majority speaking English speaking country do not require, they also exempted from producing the English language requirement, and the list can be found in the link here. There's a number of countries that would not require them as if they're an English speaking country. With the financial requirement, a student they must show sufficient money to pay for the course for 1 academic year. So what they say, when they say 1 academic year, it could be 2 terms, it could be 3 terms, but it's usually the majority of the time, it would be from September to June, or potentially from January to June, July time if it's a 2-term short course. So they have to show the money for that period of time, and they then must show the living expenses as well. You can also find more information in the link here. For the living costs, for London area, the cost per month is £1,334 monthly, and for outside London it's 1,023. So if you have a student who's coming to MPW London, that's what they will have. If you have a student who's going to Cambridge, for example, then they will be on the 1,023 for a month. Now this amount would normally be multiplied by 9 months, which is the usual to calculate. So when calculating the amount of money that a student must show, it's one of these to multiply by 9. Plus any fees that is required. Now, if they have to show bank statements, there are very strict rules about how the money should be on a bank account or on a bank statement. The money on the student's account or the parent account must be there. So the amount that you need to prove must be on there for 28 consecutive days. the balance can't go, if you have to show that you have £23,000, the balance during those 28 days cannot be lower than £23,000. If it drops, you can't use that bank statement. You have to wait for another bank statement where it shows clearly. Now, the end date of the 28-day period must be within 31 days of the date of the student applying for a visa. So I'll give you an example. If a visa application is submitted on the 1st of January 2021, you must show that the funds in the bank account was there for 28 days at least, ending on the 31st of December. So the whole month of December, the money must be there. The £23,000 must be there, and it cannot go any lower in terms of the amount, the balance. Having said that, like I said, no financial evidence is required for low-risk nationalities, including the EU. But it's important that you understand all the rules, because it may be that the student is asked for the evidence at one point, and if that's the case, they have to show the right document. And if you want to know the list of low-risk nationals, there's a list of them of countries that do not need to provide the financial documents. The list is on the link here. Now, so that's all about child, student, and student route visa. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about the visitor visa route. So there used to be the short-term study visa, which was also known as the STSV. It's now been replaced by visitor route. Before, on the visitor route, a student could come for up to 30 days only to study here, and if they were studying up to 6 months, they would need to require to get permission and apply for a short-term student visa. That's how it used to be before. From the 1st of December 2020, any visitor can come on a visitor visa and study for a course of up to 6 months at an accredited institution. They're not allowed to work on that visa, and they do not need to pay for an immigration health surcharge. So the immigration health surcharge allows students to obtain NHS cover, so for the National Health Service. But for this visitor route, the students will not have the health service cover, so they will have to purchase a medical insurance to cover them for the 6 months during their time in the UK. It is very important to note that if you have a student who has been on a visitor visa, and once the 6 months expires, they must return to their home country if they want to apply for a student visa after that. They cannot switch from a visitor visa to a student visa in the UK. And the way to apply for a visitor visa is for EU nationals. They apply generally. They don't have to apply from their home country. The majority, they can just come to the UK and get an entry through the immigration border. So what they need to do is they will be classified as non-visa nationals. They just need to prepare all the documents that they need. So the documents are the documents that I listed above. Then they travel to the UK. They show the documents at the border officer if they go through immigration, and then they get a stamp in their passport. Now, there is a debate as, well, why do I need to prepare the documents? Because if I go through the e-gates, for example, I don't need to show the documents. It is true, but there are random checks, and if they do randomly get checked, and they will be asked for the documents, and if they cannot produce the document, at that point they will not be allowed in the UK, which means they will have to return home, and nobody wants to be in this situation. Therefore, it's very important to be prepared. Also note that any students, especially the European students, they will generally go through the e-gates. When they go through the e-gates, what happens is they do not get a stamp in their passport. So it is extremely important that they keep a copy of their boarding pass and their flight tickets, because they have to produce a copy of that to myself, so that we can keep track, and it's also for visa compliance with UKVI that we do need this. Then the last route we have is the graduate route, which I spoke about quite a bit already. Like I said, it's going to be launched on the 1st of July, and it will allow students to apply for a 2-year extension visa to find work in the UK. So it's important to understand that when a student is applying for a graduate route visa, at the point of them applying for the visa, they do not need to have secured a work yet. The idea is to give them the opportunity to find a job in the UK, and that is the whole purpose of that graduate route visa. They must apply for this visa in the UK. They can't go back home for it. So usually they have to complete their course. So they graduate from their university or from their course, and then afterwards they apply for the visa. Now, to give a little bit of an example, for students who are graduating in June 2021, this summer, they must arrive in the UK. They must make sure that they've arrived in the UK on or before the 21st of June 2021. Now, you may have questions like, you may have a student who is graduating in June 2021. However, they've been studying on remotely, so they've been studying online from their home country since last October, and they're not in the UK yet. So they will still be able to apply for that graduate route, but the important thing is they must make sure that they get on a flight and arrive in the UK before the 21st of June. Now, it also applies for students who started their course in January 2021. So let's say you have a student who applied, who joined in on some sort of on a postgraduate course starting in January this year, and their course will finish, let's say, in July or August 2021. They will also be able to apply for the graduate route, but they must arrive in the UK before the 27th of September 2021. So that's the two difference with the graduate route. That's about it. Now, I also want to talk a little bit about the guardians. It is very important for all of you to understand that at MPW, each student must have a nominated guardian, and they must meet the criteria listed below. It's immaterial their age. If you have a student who's 16 or you have a student who's 20, either of those students will still need to have a guardian for MPW purposes. The guardian must be a permanent UK resident, so it has to be someone who is a UK passport holder or they have leave to remain in the UK. So if there is a family or a student rather has a family member who can be their guardian, and the guardian is a European national, as long as they have their settled status, and they can prove that they have their settled status, that will be acceptable as a permanent UK resident. They have to be an adult who is over 25 years old, and they must be speaking English fluently, and they must be available 24/7 in case of emergency. They must also live within 2 hours drive from the college where the student is at. And they must be able to provide the right level of support to the student. If families do not have someone they can use as a guardian, or like a family friend or relative or anyone they feel comfortable to use as a guardian, MPW would provide you information about using Brightworld or some other companies that we use, but the majority of our students will go to Brightworld, and Felicity will be able to provide those information to you. This one becomes It's a little bit complicated, but it's not something that there very rarely do we have students who are under 16. It's not the majority of the students are 16 or over, but there are cases where a student is maybe 15 and a half, coming for an A-level and turning 16 soon or something along those lines, or they could be a bit younger. In cases like that, if a student is under 16, they will, at the time of the course starting, they by law, they have to be living with a private foster care family, or they must, which is also known as a homestay, or they, if they have a close relative. Now, students who are in a privately fostered care family, or rather, when is a student in a private foster care family? It's when they're on a full-time basis being cared for by an adult who is not a parent or a close relative, and it's for a period of more than 28 days. Like I said, we can provide guardianship companies to be able to give you this option, and they do all the paperwork for you. They help you with everything, because they also, in situations like that, the local authority, so the UK local authority, needs to be notified when a student who's under 16 is living with an adult which is being like through a privately fostered care arrangement. If the student will be living with a close relative and they're going to be cared for by the close relative, that person is known as an intended carer. That is not considered as a private foster care arrangement, and they do not need to register with a local authority. And the definition of a close relative is quite strict in terms of it has to be a grandparent, a brother or sister, a step parent, an uncle or an aunt, and the details are all there, and they must be 18 or over. Now, in situation like that, for the CAS to be issued, MPW must receive all the relevant documentation that is attached to those specific cases before we can issue the CAS. Like I said, we can deal with them on a case-by-case basis because there are additional documentation that is required for students who are under 16. I haven't listed them here because it is not something that is used the majority of the time, but I'd be happy to send them to anyone who does want it. And that's it really for me. Gosh, I have gone a little bit over. I'm really sorry, but I did want to.
It's because you're so thorough, Shahina.
I did want to be thorough because I know how difficult to grasp when it's all new to somebody going through all these rules.
Yeah.
It does sound a bit scary. It's not scary because I'm here. I can help anyone at any time.
And you're not scary, Shahina, at all.
Thank you for bearing with me. I'm sure I have questions now.
Thank you so much, Shahina. Yeah, I think it's just important to go into as much detail as possible, just because student visas have been around for a long time, and it's just, we're quite familiar with that route, and I think any student outside of the EU, it's been kind of part of the process. And now obviously the changes that have happened with Brexit and the visa, it's just important to know why these changes have happened and which students it affects that you send to the UK. Obviously every student is an individual. It's a case by case. So any questions at all that you're not clear about that Shahina has covered today, just reach out to us. You know that us here at MPW, we're very approachable, and don't be shy in coming forward, is what I'm trying to say. So there are just a couple of questions, Shahina, if you don't mind answering.
Yeah, no worries.
So I think it's just to clarify in terms of the child student and the student visa route, because obviously there's that kind of fine line between 16 and a half, what can they, so just clarify the ages very briefly, because I know that we have run over time a little bit.
Yes, no, that's fine. So with the child and student, so if a student is, I'll try to make it as simple as possible. Anyone who's definitely under 16 has to have a child visa. Anyone who's 16 to 17 or just before turning 18, they can have either a child visa or a student visa. Now, it really depends on different education providers. At MPW, if they are 16 or 17, we will issue a child visa for them because it's a much easier application process. The only thing that they need to provide at that point, they have to provide their a parental consent letter, but that's not that difficult. Now, for anyone who's between 16 and 18, they can also apply for a student route, but like I said, at MPW, we try not to do that. Anyone who's 18 or above, we will issue them with a student route visa or student visa. So that's the difference. That for somebody who wants to apply to university, automatically they cannot apply for a child visa. There will be a student visa, because a university program will be a level 3 qualification, so it's NQF level 3, which means that automatically they have to apply for a student visa route and not a child visa route.
Okay, all right, that's clear. And I guess when it comes to the proof of funds as well, you did mention that obviously the majority of EU countries are in the low risk category, so they're not necessarily going to have to provide those additional financial documents, but it's always good to just be prepared in case. Yeah. So yeah.
Because what may happen is application is submitted whilst the case worker is assessing the application. If they have any queries or they feel for any reason that they need to request those documents, it's in their right to do so. And at that point, they are given, I'm not too sure how long they're given to produce the document, but they are given about, I believe, 10 days or so. But the issue in that instance is if they have to produce the document, obviously the funds has to be on the account for 28 days. If they haven't got the funds on the account for 28 days, it would mean that they wouldn't be able to submit it in time, and there is a risk of the application being rejected or refused, and they lose the application, the visa application fee. That's why it's better to be prepared, like I said.
Yeah, be prepared is just what we're saying. Yeah, okay. And with the visa fees, the application fees, is that something that is paid every year, or is it just a one-off?
So the visa fee is paid every time they submit a visa application. So if you have a student who's applying for a 2-year A-level program with MPW, they will pay one visa application fee for the 2-year program. Once they finish their course at MPW, they move on to university, they have to apply for a new visa. At that point, they have to pay a new visa application fee.
And just to clarify, in terms of the health surcharge as well, does that cover students with NHS services?
Yes.
It does. Okay. All right, fine. So there's no extra cost for that. They just get automatically.
That's correct. Yeah. I think that's correct. There's another question.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. We've covered that. Yeah.
Yeah. Good. And yeah, how to pay the visa, it's a one-off, but every time they apply for a new visa, then obviously, and if they're switching from a child student visa to an adult visa as well.
Yeah.
So this is kind of quite specific to IB students. Obviously, this is quite a popular qualification, and if the a student taking the IB in Italy, for example, and then wanted to join our foundation, would they need to sit an English test despite the IB?
Yes, because it's age, isn't it? No, it's down to age. That's one thing. No, it's not down to age. If they're doing a foundation, automatically they have to have an English SALT. But the IB because they're doing it in Italy, it will most probably not be an off-call qualification unless it's at a UK school based in Italy, which, like I said before, we sometimes need to check the qualification because some of them are recognized, some of them are not. But the simple way of understanding is the student generally have to have spent time in the UK or under the age of 18. So meaning that particular student of Beatrice will not qualify for the exemption, therefore they will need an English assault qualification.
Okay, all right. So again, on that type of situation,
check with me, because there, exactly.
Yeah, because there might be some exemptions to the rules
there
as well.
are sometimes, it's very ambiguous, or there's a fine line there as well.
Yeah, so thank goodness you're with us, Shahina, so that you can answer all these questions. So on a student route, English test is required only for students over 18. This is just correct. To clarify again when a student needs to have a secure English language test.
Actually, let me rephrase that. It is accurate. However, if a student is 17 and they're 17 and a half and they will be doing a foundation course, they will need a CELT, even though they are under 18.
Okay. Yeah. So again, it's just best to check with us every time you submit an application, and the what course they're applying for as well, because obviously each one is slightly different.
I think it would, because it's all new. Obviously, there's the EU visas and the EU regulations with UKVI. It will take some time for everyone to kind of understand it and just get settled in as well. And I will have to, I'm excusing myself on UKVI, but there are changes all the time, which is why I will try my best to update everyone as the changes come along. But hence the reason it's always good to check with us so that we can assist and help.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's just to try and make it as simple as possible, so that, you know, and also very clear, so there aren't any kind of last minute worries or concerns by students and things. So great. Okay, thank you so much, Shahina. One thing I just wanted to say quickly is that we will be doing another update, which I'm sure you'll be pleased to hear about, in about 4 weeks' time, and that will actually include Chris from KSS Accommodation, because we'd just like to really just clarify, obviously now that things are moving in a positive direction here with the vaccines, just to answer any questions related to the accommodation, and also if any changes have been made with the UKVI, we can update you with that, and as well in terms of vaccines and testing, because there's just a few things now. I think, like you said, Shahina, we're all just getting settled into a new routine, but as long as we're on hand to help with any questions and everything, I think that's the main thing, and everybody knows that, you know, we are very reachable, and we will respond very quickly to any questions or concerns. So yeah, I'll send an invite for that. But thank you so much for joining, and thank you so much again, Shahina. You've been amazing.
Thank you, everybody.
And thank you, Steve, for joining too, with your hopes and positive support. And we do hope to join you, or for you to join us again in about 4 weeks' time. We'll send you the invite for that. But do reach out if you have any questions before then. But thank you. Take care, everyone. Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Goodbye.
Bye bye.